Greetings, everyone. This is Brother Salim Adolfo. When people say there's no place for political violence in America, we should be clear about what that term really means. Political violence isn't only mobs and bullets, it's laws, policies, and state-sanctioned actions that harm, dispossess, and endanger communities. For Black people in this country, it has shown up for centuries in many forms. When we were kidnapped, taken hostage, and forced to work in America against our will, that was political violence. When the Supreme Court's 1857 Dred Scott versus Sanford decision declared that Black people had no rights that a white person was bound to respect, that was political violence. When the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, targeted Black liberation organizations, infiltrating them, surveilling them, and dismantling them, and then killing off leaders like Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and Dr. Martin Luther King because they wanted to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah that could unify and electrify the masses, especially our young people, that was an act of political violence. When 4 little girls were murdered in the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama, that was political violence. When 400 Black men in the Tuskegee syphilis experiment were deceived and denied treatment for syphilis under the government supervision, that was an act of political violence. When drugs were funneled into Black communities by the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and then a response was mass incarceration that put hundreds of men in prison and that tore Black families apart, that was an act of political violence. When Black women were raped by the slave master and then brutalized again by the slave master's wife for being raped, that was an act of political violence. When Black people were lynched and burned at the stake for simply trying to vote, that was an act of political violence. When Black women are paid 64 cents for every dollar that white men make for the same work, that is an act of political violence. In this country, we have always experienced political violence. When the leaders right now that we have are trying to strip D.C. of home rule and the right for these residents to govern themselves, this is an act of political violence. When budget slash Medicaid and other lifelines that keep families healthy, this is an act of political violence. In our communities, when we have judges that conspire with prisons to funnel Black youth into incarceration, that is an act of political violence. When we have factories that are toxic and that pollute the community and they are purposely put in Black and Latino communities, poisoning our children, knowing that these have lifelong effects that will prohibit them from being healthy, that is an act of political violence. Political violence is not only an event, it's a system. It is a system that deliberately uses power to harm, silence, and exploit people. If we are serious about ending political violence, we must confront it in all forms, in our courts, in our budgets, in our workplaces, in our neighborhoods, in our public safety strategies, and our public health investments. Think about it. Peace.